My husband of 8 years came out as gay, wants a divorce, and is trying to take everything, including our kids. I, 33F, have been married to my husband, 34M, for 8 years, and we have 2 beautiful children together, 6F and 4M. Up until recently, I thought we had a good marriage. We've had our ups and downs, but nothing that ever made me think he was unhappy or that our relationship was falling apart. A few months ago, my husband sat me down and told me that he's gay and has only recently realised it. He said he needs to live his truth and wants a divorce. I was blindsided. I never saw this coming, and I feel like my entire world has been flipped upside down. I understand that this is a big moment for him, and I want to be supportive, but I'm also hurt, angry, and heartbroken. Here's where things get worse. Not only is he asking for a divorce, but he's also trying to take almost everything in the process. He's the main breadwinner in our family, and because of that, he's arguing that he should get most of our assets, including the house. We both contributed to our savings and household, but since his salary is higher, he feels entitled to more. And if that wasn't enough, he's also filing for full custody of our kids. He says he's been a very involved father, which is true, but I'm just as involved, if not more. I've been the primary caregiver since they were born. Yes, I've struggled with anxiety and depression in the past, but I've worked hard to manage it and be there for our children. Now he's using that against me to try and take them away. I feel like he's not just ending our marriage, but he's ripping my entire life apart. I get that he's going through a lot, but I don't think it's fair that he's trying to take everything. Our home, our savings, and, worst of all, our children. I feel like he's being selfish, trying to secure his future at the expense of mine and the kids. It's like I'm being punished for something I had no control over. He says I'm being unreasonable for not wanting to let him take the lead in the divorce, or for being upset about what he's asking for. He claims he's trying to be fair, but I can't help but feel like I'm being taken advantage of. So, AITA, for being upset that my husband wants a divorce, is trying to take most of our assets and is fighting for full custody of our kids. Or am I overreacting because I'm emotional right now? AITA, for completely cutting my wife off from our finances because she wouldn't stop ordering takeout? I am 41 years old and male. My wife is 39 years old. My wife doesn't work due to a minor disability. It's not as if she cannot work, but she complains of discomfort and exhaustion all the time. The discussion over her working basically ended 5 years ago, and I have completely given up on the prospect of her ever having a job again. Seeing as she doesn't even come close to qualifying for disability and brings in no income, we currently live entirely off my salary. I do not mind financially supporting her, but my wife's spending habits have gradually become more and more reckless. It began with her ordering takeout twice a week, and then that escalated into 3 times a week, and now she's ordering takeout nearly every day. This is all despite our fridge being stocked constantly. I do the shopping, and I make sure to even keep our freezer full of things she would only have to microwave. Last month was a particularly heavy one for her. She spent $1,176 on delivery apps alone. We cannot afford this. There were several days that she ordered twice. I may have reacted harshly, but on Friday I pulled money out of our savings, completely paid off the card, and then cancelled it. I then removed all the money from our joint account and funneled it into my own account. Apparently, my wife learned this when she tried to order takeout. She tried to call the company, who explained the card had been cancelled. She texted me asking what had happened, and I responded that she was cut off. Well, when I walked in the door that evening, my wife was lying on the floor, dramatically saying that she had low blood sugar. I told her she could eat any of the food we have in our fridge or freezer. I also noticed that she took the garbage out, probably for the first time in a decade. I'm surprised she even knew where the outdoor bin was. I can only assume she was disposing of the evidence of what she ate, as she was pretending to have not eaten, but I honestly don't care enough to dig through the garbage to find it. She was furious at me all weekend. Was what I did over the top. AITA for telling my friend her daughter will not be going to her house without a court order. I am my best friend's 8-year-old daughter's, Emma, legal guardian. All of this was done through the courts. Emma's had a tough year. Her parents split up. Her stepdad, who's been in her life since she was 6 months old, left with her siblings and said he doesn't want anything to do with her. Her best friend died, her grandma died, and she went to the hospital 4 times / 2 surgeries. Emma is also severely allergic to nuts. The nuts have been the cause of 2 of her hospital stays. There is no set visitation schedule. I let Emma see her mum whenever she wants. Usually we have her over for dinner because my house is on her way home from work, and it means she can tuck Emma in at night. My friend recently got visitations with her other kids, so I've been bringing Emma over so she could see her siblings. Normally I stay to help out, but I had to work last weekend, so I stayed for maybe a half hour and arranged for the babysitter to pick her up after a few hours. The babysitter called me when she picked Emma up to let me know they were on the way to the hospital. Emma was covered in hives and seemed like she was having trouble breathing. I called her mum on the way to the hospital, and she told me that they were baking with almond flour, and while she gave Emma something else to do, the flour still got on her, and she had a reaction. She insisted it was fine though, because she gave Emma her EpiPen. I hung up on her, called the babysitter to tell her Emma had been in contact with nuts over an hour before and had already used her EpiPen, and met them at the hospital. We stayed in the hospital for a couple days, and her mum didn't even seem apologetic when she came to visit. She just swore that she didn't think that would happen. I asked why she'd even have nuts at the house if her kid is allergic, and she said her younger kids really wanted to make macarons, and she can't put one kid's needs over the other. She didn't think it was a big deal to have nuts in the house because Emma doesn't even live there. I told her that was it. Emma will not step foot in her house again without a court order. She left after that, but she hasn't stopped texting me to tell me to reconsider, and that I'm harming her recovery by keeping Emma away from her. She is still allowed to come over and meet us at the park, but I can't trust her unsupervised with Emma, or that her house will be safe. AITA for saying Emma will not step foot into that house without a court order. AITA for walking out on my date as soon as she told me she had 5 kids from 3 different fathers. I was on a first date with a woman who said she was 32, that I met on an online dating site. I met her at the restaurant, and the first thing that I noticed was she looked very little like her pictures. I wouldn't call it a catfish, but she did wonders with her angles, choices, and usages of filters to present herself as best as possible in her profile. The deception instantly turned me off, but I decided to proceed with the date anyways. After our drinks arrive, but before our food arrives, while getting to know each other, she tells me she has 5 kids. I know from our brief online interaction that she has never been married, so I pretty bluntly ask if they all have the same father, and she says no. She doesn't say how many baby daddies she has unprompted, so I bluntly ask, with how many men? And she seemed embarrassed to answer, then says 3. My response was, wow, and we both sat there in silence for about 30 seconds, as I desperately tried to not burst out into laughter. I'm not sure why I found the situation so funny. Maybe it was a nervous tic. I tell her, I don't see this going anywhere. Leave enough money on the table for my drink and the food I ordered, and walk out without any further conversation. I wanted to say you should disclose you have 5 kids with 3 different men on your profile to prevent from wasting people's time, but I didn't want to add insult to injury knowing I was about to walk out of, and I suppose I could have asked before meeting her. My sister's boyfriend assaulted her and sent her to ER, so I got him arrested. My sister won't talk to me. AITA? 34 F here. I've been married to my husband John for 5 years now, and we have 2 daughters together, 3F and 1F. I'll preface this by saying that I had a tough childhood. My father was an abusive alcoholic who was violent with my mother, myself, and my 2 little sisters. He passed away when I was in my early 20s, And as horrible as it sounds, I was hopeful it would allow my mum and sisters to have better lives. From the time I was young, I knew I never wanted to be in such a vulnerable situation again. I focused on my career. I'm a lawyer now, and married a sweet, dependable man who comes a kind and functional family. I want my girls to have happy childhoods, and to never feel unsafe in their home. Sadly, my youngest sister, Lisa, 29F, went in the opposite direction. Her only goal in life is to marry rich, so she doesn't have to work and can stay home with her future kids. The issue is, she chooses the worst guys. Her high school boyfriend was controlling, her next boyfriend was physically abusive, and her current boyfriend, Ian, topped the last one by putting her in the ER twice. The first time Lisa ended up in the ER, she told me she was leaving Ian. I got a call from her a few weeks later telling me they had reconciled and she was back in the ER. Again, she told me she'd leave. I was hopeful but skeptical. The prosecutor's office is bringing charges against Ian, but Lisa doesn't want to testify, so they subpoenaed her. I told Lisa she could prevent him from harming someone else by being honest about what happened, but she said she felt for Ian because he had a bad childhood and wants to change. I know Ian is out on bail, but can't legally have any communication with my sister, but I was worried they'd see each other anyway. My daughter's 3rd birthday was earlier this week. My husband and I had a birthday party for her at our home earlier today, with our families, close friends, and some of her friends from preschool. I was enjoying myself when I saw Lisa holding hands with Ian in my own backyard. I was going to confront him, but my husband told me it would escalate things. I ended up taking my girls upstairs and calling the cops. I explaining that he violated the court order and was at my home with my sister and a house full of children. The cops came and arrested Ian, and my sister started screaming that I drive drunk with my kids all the time, so they should arrest me too. To be clear, I would never do this. I told my sister to leave, and we ended the party early. I was sad for my daughter and also humiliated this happened in front of her friends, their parents, and my in-laws. I also feel immense guilt that I invited children to my home, and they were exposed to a violent predator. My mother stayed behind after everyone left and screamed at me for calling the police. I explained I didn't know what else to do because there was a predator in my home, around a bunch of innocent children. I would have never invited Lisa if I knew she was going to bring him. My mom said that he hurt Lisa, not children, and I said that abusive boyfriends take their anger out on bystanders all the time. I told my mum I don't think I'll ever forgive Lisa for putting my children in that position, and she told me I should be trying to help my sister through a difficult time rather than turning my back on her. My meal ended up coming back about an hour after I left the party. She's a former prosecutor and was upset about the situation. She said she was fearful that Ian knows where I live, especially now that I called the police on him. She said that we should stay with them if he gets out on bail until things cool down. I thanked my MIL and told her about the conversation with my mum. She agreed with me and said Lisa put my family and all the children at that party in a dangerous situation. I want to be clear that I have sympathy for Lisa and hate that she's in this position. With that being said, I can't risk my children's safety because I feel sorry for what she's going through. She put my kids in danger after I worked so hard to try and give them a happy, safe childhood. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her. AITA for calling the cops, and am I overreacting? AITA for wanting some space from my daughter after she believed I was an abuser? Basically, I, 41 male, was accused of sexually assaulting her, 16F friend, 17F. She's known her just over a year, so I've known her for the same amount of time. She tried to kiss me. I turned her down, and as a result, she accused me of raping her. It went on for a few weeks, and even went to the police, and it only came out when they were grilling her, and she finally admitted it. She was assaulted, but it was her mum's boyfriend, and she went with accusing me because I was the safe option or some shit like that. When my daughter found out at the time and I was being investigated, though, she cut me off. Basically, didn't even want to talk to me or see me. I tried to pick her up to come over, but she said she didn't even want to see me. My ex wouldn't even let me in the house. Even she believed it. And her brother, my ex, Bill, physically assaulted me and removed me from the house because I wouldn't go until I seen my daughter. Worst thing was, she blocked me on social media, but before she did, she put a status on her social media just saying some bollocks like, "Believe women," which fucking hurt. In my daughter's eyes, I was a rapist and I assaulted her friend. So now it's all came out and I'm cleared. She rang me up to say she wants to come over to talk, but I said no. I don't think it's a good idea. It hurt me when she didn't believe me, so I want to just think for a bit until I forgive her. My ex then rang saying how hurt my daughter is because I won't forgive her. She tried to apologise too, and I told her I don't accept her apology either, and that I don't want to talk to her either. They're not stopping texting me though, and my daughter tried to come over and was banging my door, asking to come in crying. I pretended I wasn't in. AITA for wanting some space because I don't know if I can forgive her yet. Edited to add because people keep on asking, "Why were you alone with a 17-year-old? I wasn't really alone with her. They were both staying at my house. I went for a wee in the middle of the night and she was waiting outside the toilet door and scared me a bit coming out. I laughed it off and she basically lunged trying to kiss me. I laughed it off, told her no and went back to bed. I didn't really pay it any more attention and, truth be told, forgot about it." Update. I've messaged her saying, basically, I'm still too hurt to want to talk and I need time and space and that I'll let her know when I want to get in touch. I also said I still love her, despite not really being sure if I should say that when I am not sure if I can forgive yet. I've also messaged my ex saying to make sure she or my daughter don't contact me again until I'm ready. Not heard anything back yet, but hopefully I won't. AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding after he kicked me out of the bridal party for getting engaged. I, 41F, have always been close with my brother, Tom, 38M, and we've had a great relationship. When he got engaged to his fiancée Sarah, 38F, I was honoured to be asked to be a bridesmaid. They've been planning a big wedding for over a year, and I've been heavily involved in helping organise things, and even offered to cover some of the costs since my brother and his fiancée were on a tight budget. A few months ago, my partner proposed. I already refer to him as my husband, but we weren't officially married, to me, and I said yes. We kept it low-key to not take away from Tom's upcoming wedding, since we have been together for years and have an established marriage-like life together. However, after announcing our engagement, Sarah became cold towards me. Tom later told me that Sarah was upset, feeling like I stole her spotlight by getting engaged before their wedding. A week later, Tom and Sarah called me and said that because of the timing of my engagement, it would be best if I stepped down as a bridesmaid. Sarah wanted the focus on her, and apparently my new engagement was too distracting. I was hurt, but agreed to step down to keep the peace. Here's where things escalated. Tom recently asked if I was still willing to help cover the wedding costs I had previously offered to pay for, a significant amount. I was shocked. I politely declined, saying that I didn't feel comfortable contributing anymore since I was no longer in the bridal party and felt hurt by the situation. Tom got really upset and called me selfish, saying I'm ruining his big day. Sarah even accused me of holding a grudge and trying to punish them. Now, my family is split. Some think I should still help since I initially offered, while others agree that it's unfair to expect me to contribute after being kicked out of the wedding party. So, AITA for refusing to cover the wedding expenses after being removed from the bridal party?
My wife is demanding a car as a gift for giving birth. I told her it's ridiculous and not happening. AITA? My wife and I have been together for 5 years. She's pregnant with our first right now. A few days ago, she sends me a TikTok video of a woman over one of those extremist podcasts talking about deserving some kind of a push present. At first, I didn't even know what that meant, but when I looked it up, it's basically a thank you gift to the woman who brought your child in the world. This concept is and still seems very strange to me. I understand seeking appreciation from your husband for what women go through during pregnancy and childbirth, but it's the materialistic part that gave me the ick. The woman on the TikTok went on and on about how it's a body for a body, which meant the man would have to get a permanent tattoo on his lower body, give her a house and a car as a gift exclusively to her. I felt that those expectations are very entitled, honestly a little vindictive, envious, permanent tattoo part, and very over the top for my taste. The decision to bring a child in the world is both partners' decision. My wife in our case is not forced to be a mom or be pregnant, as she wants to be a parent too. I simply replied to the TikTok with laughing emojis and moved on, thinking it was the end of it, and probably thought she meant to send that TikTok as a satire, like, "Oh, look how dumb this woman is," thinking she deserves all that. She was in the other room when I reacted to the video, so she comes to me and tells me that she doesn't expect a tattoo and a house exclusively for her, but she wants me to dip into my personal savings to get her a car exclusively for her. I looked at her, almost shocked, and began laughing. I thought my wife and I had similar views on how extremist people can be, and I was wrong. I thought she was joking, and I pressed her if she was actually serious. She got very annoyed that I thought she was joking and probably imitating the entitled woman on the reel, and she flatly said that she expects a real push present. I said that her gift is the gift of parenthood and the realized outcome of a healthy baby. And materially speaking, I'll probably gift her a Mother's Day card, a day out, or some jewelry she wants, total under $700. But nothing more. I said if she really wants an extra car, it'll be our car, not just hers. She pressed more and said how it isn't enough for what she will go through. She kept pushing and asked me if I think she's not worthy enough. I told her she is worthy as my partner and the mother of my child, but she has to be realistic and realize that none of us, individually speaking, is worthy of what she's asking for, that she has to manage her expectations because I don't see why she feels she deserves that. It came out wrong, but I didn't mean to dismiss her as a person. She isn't speaking to me and is crying, arguing about it. I heard her criticizing me to her sister on the phone, but under no circumstances would I ever considering gifting her a car. I feel bad she is hurting right now, but I don't feel bad for giving her a reality check. My brother kicked me out of his house years ago due to his wife. Now that he is broke, he wants to move in with me. AITA for refusing? All right. This is a long one, and I honestly need an outside perspective. Several years ago, I, 28F, was living with my older brother, Tom, 37M, and his wife, Karen, 34F. I had just graduated from college, had a pretty bad job at the time, and was struggling to make ends meet. Tom had a house with a guest room, and he told me I could stay with them for a while until I got back on my feet. I was beyond grateful, and I made sure to help out however I could, cooking, cleaning, buying groceries when I could afford it. Fast forward about 6 months. I finally landed a decent job and was able to contribute more financially. I was on my way to becoming independent. Around this time, Karen got pregnant. At first, everything seemed fine, but then Karen started dropping subtle hints that they needed more space for the baby. The hints soon turned into direct conversations about how they needed the guest room for a nursery. Tom assured me that I could stay until I found a new place, but Karen was clearly becoming more agitated by the day. Then, one afternoon, I came home from work to find all my stuff packed up and sitting in the hallway. Tom told me that Karen had decided they needed me out ASAP. No discussion, no warning. He tried to soften the blow by saying they'd help me with a security deposit on a new place, but it was humiliating and hurtful. I ended up couch surfing for a couple of months until I could afford a small studio apartment. It was a really tough time for me, both emotionally and financially. I'll never forget the feeling of being thrown out of my own brother's house like that. Fast forward to now. Tom's life has taken a turn. His business went under, and they're having financial issues. Last week, he called me out of the blue, sounding desperate. They're being evicted from their house and have nowhere to go. He asked if he, Karen, and their 2 kids could stay with me for a few months, while they get back on their feet. Here's the thing. I'm doing much better now. I have a good job, a nice apartment, and I've been saving for a house. I can technically accommodate them, but the thought of letting them move in after what they did to me years ago just doesn't sit right. I told Tom I needed to think about it, and ever since, he's been sending me guilt-trippy texts about how family is supposed to be there for each other, and how they have nowhere else to go. Even my parents have gotten involved, saying I should let them stay with me because they're family, and what happened years ago is in the past. But here's the kicker. Karen hasn't apologized once for how they treated me. Not a word. She didn't even acknowledge it when we spoke on the phone. It's like they expect me to just forget about it and welcome them with open arms. I'm torn. Part of me feels like I should help because they are my family, but the other part of me feels like this is karmic justice. AITA for refusing to let them stay with me after what they did? Or should I let the past go and help them out in their time of need? AITA for telling my stepmother-in-law I'm glad she can't have children? When my wife was a teenager, her stepmother had health issues that eventually led to a hysterectomy. She and my father-in-law had been trying to conceive prior to that, and she's very open about how painful it was to become unable to have kids. She's been in therapy for years, but this is still a sore subject, so we don't bring it up. During the pandemic, Smeal became a vegetarian. While I obviously have no problem with that, no one else in the family is, and she tends to get very preachy about it. There is one specific video of cattle being slaughtered and processed that she has sent multiple family members. Because of that preachiness, my wife and I try to avoid having meals with her. I've also been told that she and FIL often eat in separate rooms. Anyway, my wife and I attended a wedding about 2 weeks ago. Our regular babysitter canceled on us at the last minute, so Phil and Smeal volunteered to watch our kids, 8M and 5F. They babysat our children once a few months ago and things went fine, so my wife and I agreed. The kids were asleep when we returned home. The next day, my daughter was very upset. She barely spoke all morning. When we sat down for lunch, she started crying and refused to eat. We tried to talk to her, but she refused to tell us what was wrong. Eventually, my son told us what happened. We had promised the kids they could have burgers for dinner. My Phil was aware of that, but he apparently fell asleep less than an hour after we left. When it was time for dinner, the kids went to ask Smeal to make the burgers, and she refused. My son offered to wake Phil up, but she said no to that too. She said she would make the kids something else for dinner. When my children started begging for the burgers, Smeal showed them the cattle video. She also apparently told them my wife was secretly against them eating meat, which is why they hesitated to tell us what she'd done. My wife and I had a talk with our kids and managed to get them to feel better. After they went to bed, we called Smile. She confirmed she'd shown them the video. To say we're both outraged would be putting it lightly. My wife and I immediately told her we were cutting her off from our kids, and we'll probably do the same with Phil for falling asleep while he was supposed to be babysitting. Smile started trying to defend herself. She told us she was only trying to help and that we should be making more efforts to get our kids to eat healthy. It only made me angrier. I told her she has no idea how glad I am that she can't have children, because I'd pity the child that would have her as a mother. After that, she hung up on us. FIL has been calling and texting us. He is apologetic for falling asleep, but insists that cutting him and his wife off is an overreaction. He's also angry that I mocked Smile's infertility. Apparently, she is distraught at what I said, and FIL is demanding I apologize to her. Honestly, I don't think I'm the asshole here, but I am wondering whether I went too far. My wife agrees it was a low blow that Smeal deserved to hear, but a low blow nonetheless. AITA, stepdad cheated on mom, so I got him fired from 2 jobs, broke up his relationship with his affair partner and sent him to prison. Now he is struggling with child support and begging mom to take him back. This may be a long one, apologies in advance. I moved in with my mom after her marriage of 25 years with my bio dad was ended. He was a manipulative asshole, but that's another story. Shortly after the divorce, my mom introduced me to her boyfriend at the time, Chris. Now, my mom worked as a correctional officer at the county jail. The boyfriend was a former inmate, in for a DUI. That should have been the first red flag, but my mom was grieving a long marriage, and I didn't want to push the subject. Chris seemed to make her happy, and that was enough for me. Me, bro, and sis all moved in with mom and Chris, and we seemed to get along okay. Chris and I bonded a bit over our love of video games, and all seemed well. That is, until 2017. Due to Chris's prior DUI, he had to go in regularly for probationary checkups at the courthouse. One day he didn't return, and we got a little worried. We then received a phone call from him, from Texas. Turns out, when he arrived at the courthouse that day, he was jumped by the FBI. His family from Texas was implicated on a number of gang and drug-related crimes, and due to a situation where he was in a vehicle during a drug handoff, he was on the hook as well. He ended up agreeing to testify against his family members in exchange for a shorter sentence, and allowed to be out of prison before the trial. My mom was distraught, and over the course of many phone calls over a year, they worked out their marriage plans when he returned. His store owner at the DQ he worked at allowed him to come back as well, back to his store manager position. Soon after, the drinking started. Now, obviously, because of his DUI, Chris was clearly no stranger to drinking. He began to drink more and more, to the point where he was consuming half a 24-pack of beer a day. Chris was a mean drunk. He regularly started fights when wasted, and while they never got physical, he wasn't exactly kind with his words. My mom enabled his behavior for several years, saying the stress was getting to him from work and from the upcoming trial. Finally, after several years, my mom had enough. Chris came home extremely drunk one night, and my mom confronted him. She asked if he'd been drinking, and when he didn't deny it, she kicked him out. He went to live with a friend temporarily. The next morning, Mom asked us to help gather a few of his essentials so that he didn't have to re-enter the home until he was sober. While we were gathering his things, we heard a knock at the front door. We opened it to find Betty, one of Chris's co-workers and someone I went to high school with. She told my mom she had something important to share. After sitting my mom down and telling her not to share where she got the info from, Betty told my mom about how Chris was cheating on my mom with Darla, how he regularly had Darla perform sexual acts in and around his workplace, how Betty had caught them, and how Chris told her that if she ever told my mom, he'd fire her. He was the store manager. And finally, how Darla was pregnant. My mom was angry. After the initial shock wore off, she told us to round up all of Chris's things and to dump it outside. We took everything of his out of the house and tossed it all in the alley behind our house. Chris had no reason or ability to return to the house. It was rented, with only my mom on the paperwork, so no issues there. In the meantime, she called and confronted him. He confessed to the entire affair, and that he was happy Darla was pregnant, because that meant he'd finally have a child of his own. Mom refused to have more kids. We three were massive strains on her body. She likely wouldn't survive anymore. He refused to apologize for any of his actions. My mom arranged for him to collect his items from the alley, with an officer present, and he left our lives. The revenge. Now, my mom clearly wanted to dust her hands of him and move on. She was already quite emotional from the whole ordeal and wanted nothing more from him. But Sis Bro and I had other ideas. First, we called his workplace. DQ operates as an independently owned franchise, and the owner of this branch owned several branches in the area. He was also a good friend. We informed him of the sexual acts being performed on the premises, and he went the processes of getting Chris booted from his position and barred him from any of the branches in the area. Funnily, Betty got his position after he left, and now runs a tight and clean ship. Chris no longer had a job or a place to live, and so went to live with Darla in a town about an hour away. We found out that he started working at another DQ in that town, and informed the owner of that location of the situation. It took significantly longer, due to there being no current indecent actions occurring there, but eventually he lost that job too. Soon after, Chris began driving around our neighborhood, seemingly stalking my mom and our family, probably because of his job loss. Now, due to the whole situation in Texas, he never had his probation lifted for his DUI, and thus still did not have a license. He never had to drive when he lived with us, since work was local and we could drive him as needed. But here was, clearly driving around by himself when he shouldn't be. We contacted the police and informed them about Darla's vehicle in our neighborhood, and that we believed Chris was driving it, without a license. We told them to pull over the vehicle next time they see it, as it would likely be C driving again. Sure enough, a few weeks later, we were told that Chris indeed was pulled over, and sent back to the local jail for driving without a license and while intoxicated. The police also did a search of the home he was staying at and found several guns at the premises. Since he was a felon, he was not legally allowed to have weaponry on the premises, meaning there was more jail time tacked on. By the time his jail time had finished, it was just in time for him to be sent back to incarceration in Texas for the trial. Chris's son was born while Chris was in prison. Darla evidently realized what an absolute ass Chris was, and cut ties with him while he was in prison. During his prison time, Chris started sending tons of letters to my mom, stating how sorry he was, pleading to take him back, and ranting about how it wasn't his fault. All in the same letter, mind you. Mom burnt every one of them. We moved on, moving out of state. Chris evidently got out of prison some years ago and now lives in Kansas, struggling and fighting child support, which Darla sued him for. Mom now has a new boyfriend, who treats her right and cares a lot more than Chris ever did. Bro and sis moved on and out, and I still live with Mom, assisting her with the newly purchased home that we've been renovating. Life is looking okay. I was reminded of this by a chat with a coworker about cheaters, and thought to post it here for others to enjoy. AITA for telling my gay best friend I will never give birth to his child. I've known this friend, let's call him Jared, 30 meters, since we were in school. We did everything together and were inseparable. I was even the first person he came out to, and we've always supported each other. When we were 15, he told me for the first time that he want me to give birth to his child with his future husband, because he, being a man, could never get pregnant. At the time I told him no, because I had recently watched a series where a woman gave birth the triplets of his brother and became depressed afterward. I've always been a sensitive person and suffer from anxiety and depression because of childhood trauma. So even at that age I was aware that I couldn't go truff something like that. But he got mad and didn't talk to me for 2 days. Then we went back to talking normally, but every now and then, he would bring the topic again, getting angry every time I told him I would never do that for anyone, even if he paid me. I explained to him 1,000 times, but he didn't seem to understand, until eventually he stopped mentioning it, and I thought he had finally matured and understood me. But this year his boyfriend proposed to him, and during a dinner with friends he asked me again. They said they would pay me well and that if I needed therapy, they will cover that expenses too. But I got angry and told him that I would never give birth to his child, and that I didn't understand why he keeps insisting that if he was so willing to compensate me well financially, he should save that money and pay a woman willing to do it. But as always, he'd get mad at me and leave the restaurant with his boyfriend following him. Most of my friends, women to be more precise, are on my side and agree that it's uncomfortable that he keeps insisting, while other friends from the community think I'm overreacting and that it would be a nice thing to do. Most of my friends are on my side, but they think we should meet to talk about this more calmly. But what bothers me the most is that he is being like this for years, and I always have to seek him out or wait for him to approach me again. I appreciate him a lot because we've been friends for so long, 15 years, but I'm tired of this pointless argument and him getting mad at me for deciding about my body. He always says he want me to give birth his child because I'm the person he trusts most in the world, but I really don't want to do it. But at the same time, I don't want to lose him. My coworker kept stealing my lunch, so I mixed laxatives in the lunch. She had a severe allergic reaction, got hospitalized, and almost died. Now she is suing me for attempted murder. AITA? For the past 3 months, someone at my job has been consistently stealing my food that I bring from home so I don't have to use the snack machine or walk across the street to McDonald's like the majority of my coworkers do. In the first month, I noticed someone had been gradually taking some of my food. 1 out of 3 slices of pizza gone, 20% of my soup gone, Cheetos bag completely gone, etc. Didn't think much of it, and simply decided to now attach a "please don't touch" paper sign on my stuff. In the second month, at start of the month, my food became untouched, but progressively went back to the usual. At the beginning of the third month, I asked coworkers if they had taken or knew who was taking my food, and no one had a clue, which is kind of believable as most of us take our lunches separately. I decided to eat McDonald's or go to 7-Eleven and stop bringing food, but then it started fucking with my financial stability. 10 to 12 days a paycheck, 14 days, consistently buying food? I decided to take matters into my own hands. My friend told me about a reel that she saw where a girl put laxative into her own food to see who was the culprit, and that's exactly what I did. What I wasn't expecting was for the girl, late 20s, to have an allergic reaction to an ingredient, and ended up going to the hospital. After work, all of us went to visit her in the hospital where we all talked about what happened and admitting to putting laxative into my own food. 6 8th co-workers, all girls, were disgusted by my actions and were on her side. One girl was whatever about it, and the last guy said she shouldn't have been touching my food to begin with. I told the girl that I hope she gets better and went home, but I didn't apologize for what I did, and I'm not going to. Today, day off, I received a phone call from our supervisor, who I spoke to about my issue between after the first month and told me she can't help me there because she's not our mom, and essentially told me I had to apologize to her or else I wouldn't be able to come back to work until I do. and I'm assuming if I take too many days, I'd just be fired for not coming to work. Update 1. Just received a text from my supervisor telling me the coworker doesn't need to apologize and it's up to her discretion if she chooses to apologize or not for stealing my food. Update 2. I'm a male for those who keep referring to me as a she, even though I never mention my gender LOL. Update 3. Male coworker who was on my side told me the girl is going to take legal action for attempting to kill her. He overheard the girls talking today at work. Update 4. Many of you YTA voters are forgetting the fact that my please do not touch sign never left. Even though it stopped working eventually, I still kept it there. So when she took my laxative food from my plastic bag, the sign please don't touch my food was still on it. My daughter rejected her crush after his accident left scars. Now my husband calls her a shallow monster. Hello all, my husband and I have been arguing about this all day and I need some outside perspective. My husband picked my daughter, Cindy, up from school and he saw her speaking to a schoolmate that she had previously had a crush on. For context, last year during a sleepover, my husband and I overheard Cindy's friends lightly teasing her over having a crush on this boy. My husband also gently teased her with some innocent jokes like, Cindy and boy sitting on a tree, KISSING type of silliness, and he sometimes brings it up randomly to tease her, like asking her if she wants to invite her boyfriend when we go on family outings. She never actually dated him or is even friends with him as far as we know. Her dad just likes to tease her. Anyway, apparently over the summer the boy was injured in an accident and he missed the first couple of weeks of school as a result. When my husband was picking her up, he saw them talking and noticed that the boy had significant scarring on his face and hand. When he asked her what happened to him and what they were talking about, saying that the boy looked disappointed, she explained to him about his accident and that he was just asking her out on a date, but that she turned him down. My husband was furious at her and scolded her for being so shallow as to reject him because his appearance has changed. Cindy was crying when she got home. She told me all this and insisted she was polite when turning him down and was just not interested in him romantically anymore. I told my husband to apologize to my daughter and that he never should have made her feel bad for turning down anyone's romantic advances. I told him that our daughter is old enough to decide who she is attracted to, and it would be cruel of her to have said yes out of pity, thus leading him on. My husband is now saying that he sees me differently, and that I should be ashamed for teaching Cindy to be a shallow monster and ableist. He is also angry that I undermined him when he was scolding our daughter and says we should not undermine each other's authority when disciplining our child. I was not doing it to undermine him. I just think it's not healthy to make our daughter feel guilty and shamed for not being interested in someone. I do feel bad for the boy, but I don't think it is anyone's place, neither mine nor my husband's, to tell Cindy she has to date someone, or she's a bad person. AITA? Edit. Wow. I did not anticipate this getting so many responses when I wrote it last night before bed. I'm trying to read through all the replies so I can approach this with my husband again later today. I'm also going to have a talk privately with Cindy about the situation. Thank you so much for all the responses. I feel more confident now in my choice to defend Cindy. My husband is not a bad guy. He didn't tease Cindy to hurt her, it was to be playful, and Cindy didn't seem too bothered by it. She would usually brush him off when he made those jokes. I think my husband was short-sighted when it came to this situation, but he is not a bad father and he really loves me and his daughter, even if he makes mistakes sometimes. AITA for kicking my broke-ass sister and her boyfriend out because they don't respect my sleep schedule. My 34F sister, 27F, and her boyfriend, 28M, moved in with me at the end of August after he was laid off from work. She doesn't make enough to pay rent on her own. The agreement was for them to stay at my apartment through the holidays so they could save up money and he could find a new job. All they'd have to contribute is $500 for rent and food. He has done his part and found a new job, and they have been saving money for their move, which is part of the reason why I feel like I might be the asshole here. I work graveyard in a small group home for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I cannot sleep at work because I'm the only one there, and I have to be awake in case one of our residents needs me or there's an emergency. I spend my time at work cleaning, doing documentation, changing people's depends, making their meals for the next day, and giving a few of them their showers in the morning. Needless to say, I have to stay awake and alert the entire time I'm there. My sister has a difficult time understanding that I need my place to be reasonably quiet during the day so I can get my sleep. I could understand some normal amount of noise, but she took it over the top, laughing obnoxiously loud, blasting her music or TV in the living room, right next to my bedroom, having loud guests over, being very loud in the bathroom and kitchen, etc. I asked very nicely many times to please keep it down, and she always apologized and said, okay. But then she started to make it my problem and said I should buy noise-canceling headphones or sleep at my boyfriend's place instead. I finally got upset and told her they're being allowed to stay with me as guests, and if she can't act as such, then they need to find somewhere else to stay. She spent the rest of the day calling all her friends and everyone in our family, telling them how horrible I am for threatening to kick them out. Our parents reached out to me and asked if that was true. I told them the situation, and they're on my side, but said I should give them the month to figure things out. I called and spoke with her boyfriend, and he felt genuinely bad about the situation and had no idea this was an issue. I try not to bring him into things, but figured since this would affect him, it was only right. Now she's even more furious with me because I went behind her back and called him and manipulated him into being on my side. I told her, look, I will give them until November 1st to figure something out. And he even said it probably wouldn't even be that long as they could go stay with his parents, but my sister is choosing to die on this hill and make me out to be the villain when all I wanted was some quiet so I could function at work. AITA for kicking them out? I do feel bad because her boyfriend is doing what he can and is being reasonable. I just don't understand why my sister can't comprehend that I can't sacrifice my sleep and put my livelihood at risk. Thoughts? My broke BF and his entire family wants to move into my house and mooch off my money. I broke up with him, kicked him out of my house, and called his mother and her children losers. AITA? I'm F40, at a point in my career where I've been able to accomplish some things very fast and some took a long, huge minute. I'm very grateful and ready for my new chapter, which includes relocation and a slower pace. I'm in the process of ending a relationship, Jason M39, since I recently came to the conclusion that I can't be with him. I've given him lots of opportunities and I feel depleted and tired. It's come to a point where I get tense by merely hearing his voice. We are engaged, and we have also gotten over many bad moments in our relationship. I was extremely busy, and now that I have the opportunity of finding myself a bit, I just don't want to get married. He comes from a family with trauma. His parents had a very bad and long-dragging divorce and their children got pulled into it. Maybe I shouldn't talk like this, but all of their kids are losers, including my fiancé. I've tried to ignore this, but I'm ashamed of him. His sister has a cosmetology certificate, but she refuses to get a job because she needs to be a SAHM, yet is always angry at her ex because his child support isn't enough. His two brothers are musicians. One works at a hotel and sent his baby mama home to her parents as soon as she got pregnant, and the other one lives a man-child life. Both Bills spend long nights playing with bands but never get paid, so they frequently have problems at their real jobs for tardiness. Jason and I had issues early on because he kept switching jobs and complaining. We reached a stable stage in our relationship until we got engaged. I don't feel like I'm his priority. Everything always needs to go to his family. Every plan, every potential progress is always about giving to his family. When I got an opportunity to develop a food truck park, he immediately tried to bring his mother into it so that she could get a food stand to help her. If I get a hospitality client, he immediately asks if his brothers can get hired. Not only this, but tries to create opportunities so that they can get plugged onto whatever I'm doing and start a business sucking the life out of my clients. Of course, I never allow it. He doesn't understand that this has cost me lots of blood, sweat, and tears to get, and that I'm not okay just handing it down. For background, I have access to both medium-sized and small companies, and I got my first global client last year. At the time when my career began to really pick up, Jason and I had gotten engaged, and I felt comfortable sharing my progress. By holiday season last year, I had a very complicated situation. I needed to complete a deadline, but had already bought tickets for my kids to fly to see my parents. Jason confirmed that he would go with me whenever I was ready, so I didn't book a flight as he would drive us. I flew my kids, came back, worked my ass off, and was both anxious and worried. I kept open communication with the client, delivered by the 22nd but needed to wait for their approval, which included a visit to their location. They are manufacturers, so I was basically on call. It was approved, but Jason went MIA. It was too late to get a flight, but when he replied to give him a couple of hours, I was relieved thinking that we would leave soon. He stalled and made me wait until I started crying due to anxiety. I ended up driving myself while exhausted on Christmas Eve, which is exactly what I didn't want. I had to stop at a motel to sleep a few hours and then get on and spent Xmas forcing myself to stay awake to be present for my family. I nearly broke up with him over this, especially when he said he didn't leave early because his mother got emotional. So fast forward and I have gotten good contracts. Clients have been referring other clients and I finally stabilized my schedule and have been hiring more people. I was super excited to share my progress with him. I got a very good opportunity to move closer to my family and to work for a very large company for very good money. The minute that I told him, he started with the family business subject. He wanted me to hire a company that he would create. I am firmly opposed to this. That's a company only on name. He wanted to tap into anything that can be done, his words. He has been very insistent, but dropped it because we had a huge fight. He's been very enthusiastic about moving. He has a job prospect and he would earn a better salary. Last month we found a rental property and we're discussing our plans. I need a home office and bedrooms for my kids. He mentioned that he needed a spare room for guests. I immediately had a bad feeling and he said he wanted his family to stay over until they found their own jobs. He said the family room could be converted into another extra bedroom. I could picture myself having to deal with his family and being unable to evict them. I tried to talk to him, but he said it's what he wants and he has a right to bring his family and said period, which sounded so one-sided that it has made me rethink the whole matter. I mean, who's going to pay for all this? I asked if he planned on doing all this on my dime and he started throwing things. I sat him down for a serious conversation and his reasoning is that family helps family. True, in my case, because we are very close, but they don't use me as their personal raft. I was very blunt and as honest as I could. I don't want his family living with us, and he knows that. I will not agree to financially support anyone, especially after he's made plans to spend my new money, but hasn't asked me if I agree, or even if I plan on helping my own family. He has never asked if my family needs anything. It's all about him. He has made plans to get his family inside our new home without offering a potential deadline, and has dropped hints about wanting a new car. I was sincere about slowly losing my respect for him, because his ways have made me feel like he has no respect for my sacrifices and everything I went through to get to this point. It wasn't him getting sleep-deprived and being constantly on the line to get things done. The conversation went nowhere because he grabbed his backpack and went out. A few days later, he told me that he got fired and sent me the memo that he got, and it clearly said it was because of insubordination. There is so much to unpack about this, from being a possible poor example to my kids, to being a weak man who won't be able to answer for our family, should I be unable to support us. Fuck that shit. I can't. I told him that I wanted to break up, and he said things that are embarrassing. He said he thought he'd finally found the love of his life, but said he is dissatisfied with me because I'm taking away all of his dreams. The entire situation was cringe because he held onto the car wheel and started rocking back and forth. He accused me of being a snob now that I'm rich. I'm not rich, but I hope my opportunities keep opening up so that I can build my wealth. I told him the problem was right there. He's asking to stay together, but won't work on himself. I gathered all of his belongings and asked him to come pick them up, and he refused. So I had to drive to Mael's house, and once there, she confronted me. She said that I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing by playing a goody two-shoes, moron, stupid in their family slang, and secretly working to rip the family apart. She mentioned very personal things that I know I didn't share with her, and it made me so mad that I called her and all of her children losers. He keeps sending me info on couples therapy, but I just don't want it. He won't remove his car from my garage, and he won't take his gym equipment, which is too heavy. He says he would have done it, but because I called him a loser, he's not removing anything, because I disrespected his mom, AITA, for confronting her. My girlfriend went to a party that I wasn't invited to. I suspect she's cheating on me, so I broke up with her. AITA? I 24M, and my girlfriend 23F, Anne began dating in college. Last week, Anne invited me to her coworkers' Joe party. I had heard a lot about him in the past, and he and she really seemed to have a lot in common, especially with their taste in music. Apparently, he was an amateur musician with a fairly successful YouTube channel. Joe initially invited only Anne, but when she asked him if I could tag along, he said it was fine. The party was on Saturday evening. It was a fun party with about 30 people, held at a restaurant Joe had rented out. Towards the end, though, I wandered into Anne's little discussion group, and I immediately got the feeling that nobody really wanted me there, most of all Anne. It was her, Joe, and a few other people. Thinking that I was just imagining things, I hung around and listened to Joe basically boast about himself the whole time. A little while later, I wandered off to get myself a drink and chat with a few other people. Eventually, the time to leave came around, and I went to find Anne again. Joe approached me at that point and said that he was having an after-party over at his house. I was going to refuse, but then he said, "Sorry, man, but only Anne is invited," while clapping me on the shoulder. I first told him not to touch me, and then said, "She's not going." He informed me that she had already accepted the invitation. I texted Anne immediately to ask where she was. She responded, "Sorry, on the way to Joe's place. I'll see you tomorrow, love you." I asked if she knew I wasn't invited, and she then left me on read. Texts after that were all ignored. I drove home furious. I stayed up all night, and finally Anne walked in the door at 5:42 a.m. I know because I was by the window watching. I recognized the car as Joe's and the driver as Joe. Nobody else was in the car. Anne waved to him cutely and laughed at something he said. Anne came inside and acted surprised to see me still up. At that point, I flatly told her that we were done, and she had the rest of the day to move out. Anne was at first confused with me, and then I told her that she can just move in with Joe. She rolled her eyes and said nothing happened. She gave me this spiel about my insecurities and imagination. I said it didn't matter. After this back and forward arguing, Anne finally relented and sarcastically thanked me for wasting the best years of her life. Anne finally moved out yesterday, and it was pretty dramatic. She said that she loved me and that I was throwing away everything over a party. Did I do her wrong here? I feel like I'm getting gaslighted.